I walked into the birthday party expecting joy, but the room felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. Whispers stopped when I entered, glances slid away. Even the kids seemed on edge. Then I saw it, a mysterious box with my name, sitting alone in the corner. My chest tightened. Years of questions I never dared ask suddenly demanded answers. What had been kept from me? Why now? And as I looked around at the smiling faces that suddenly seemed so strange, I realized this birthday was never about celebration. It was the day I would uncover a truth no one thought I'd ever see. I almost didn't go to that birthday, and that's the honest truth. 'Cause some mornings you just wake up with a strange weight on your chest and you don't know why. And that day felt heavy from the jump, like the air itself was trying to nudge me to stay home. And it wasn't just any birthday either. It was one of those family birthdays that everybody acts like it's a big deal. Balloons, cake, loud laughs, fake smiles, the whole 9 yards. And at my age, you start to feel the difference between noise and real joy, between loud love and quiet truth. And I stood in my bedroom for a good long while, just staring at my reflection, thinking about how many birthdays I'd already lived through, how many parties I'd smiled through when my spirit was tired. And a little voice inside me kept whispering, "You don't gotta go. You don't gotta show up for people who don't fully show up for you." But I went anyway, 'cause that's how I was raised, to keep the peace, to show up, to put on a face even when your heart ain't settled. And when I pulled up to the house, I noticed something right away that felt off. Not loud off, just quiet off. Like the kind of wrong note you hear in a song you've heard 1,000 times. The driveway was full of cars, but it felt empty, like all the warmth stayed outside and didn't make it through the front door. And when I walked in, folks hugged me a little too tight, or didn't hug me at all. And that's when I felt that weird balance of attention and avoidance. And that's dangerous, 'cause that's the space where secrets like to breathe. And as people laughed and talked and filled the room with noise, I could feel that I was inside something bigger than a birthday, something heavier than candles and cake. 'Cause everybody was trying just a little too hard to act normal. And you don't do that unless you're hiding something. And I tried to shake it off. I really did. Told myself I was just old and tired and overthinking. But the eyes told a different story. The way certain people avoided looking at me, the way conversations stopped when I walked by, the way voices lowered just enough for me to feel it, but not enough for me to prove it. And sitting down on that couch with the paper plate on my lap and a plastic fork in my hand, I realized something that made my stomach knot up. This didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a setup. Not a loud one, not a dramatic one, but a slow, quiet setup. The kind that creeps in soft and buries itself in your spirit before you even know it. And I watched the birthday girl blowing out the candles, the wish made, the smile flashed for the camera. And all I could think about was how strange it felt that I wasn't in the photos. How strange it was that nobody called my name to sit closer. How strange it was that my presence felt like an afterthought, even though I'd been the backbone of that family for years. And right then, I felt it deep in my gut, like something that had been building a long time was about to crack open. And I didn't know when, I didn't know how,
but I knew for a fact that walking into that birthday had just stepped me into a story I wasn't ready for yet. And the scariest part was, I could feel that the real moment wasn't the party itself. It was what was about to happen when someone thought I wasn't listening anymore.
What bothered me most about that birthday wasn't the cake or the music or the decorations. It was the whispers, the ones that didn't belong in a happy room, the kind that slide under the noise and crawl straight into your bones. And I started noticing how groups would form and break apart the minute I walked near them, how voices would drop like somebody hit a mute button, and how laughter would suddenly turn into nervous coughing or fake compliments. And right there, I knew I wasn't crazy, 'cause old age don't make you blind. It makes you sharper in ways young folks don't understand. And I sat there pretending to scroll through my phone while my ears did all the real work. And that's when I caught a few broken pieces of sentences, not full conversations, just dangerous little crumbs like "she doesn't know," and "not tonight," and "after the candles." And hearing those words felt like ice water running through my chest, because anytime people say "she doesn't know," and you the only she in the room who might matter, your soul starts connecting dots before your brain wants to. And I tried to calm myself down, told myself maybe they were talking about a gift, maybe they were planning some harmless surprise. Maybe I was letting old fears crawl back into my head, but the atmosphere wouldn't let me relax. It felt thick, like the air had secrets stuck in it. And the more I watched, the more things started not adding up. Because people kept checking the clock, people kept looking toward the back hallway, and people kept glancing at me with eyes that weren't warm or loving, but measuring, like they were waiting for the right time to do something. And as I sat there sipping my watered-down soda, pretending everything was cool, my heart started beating harder, not from fear, but from awareness. 'Cause when you live long enough, you learn the difference between being surprised and being targeted. And that party didn't feel like something happening for the birthday girl anymore. It felt like something forming around me. And the craziest part is how normal everything looked on the outside. Kids running, plates clinking, balloons bumping the ceiling. But under all that noise was this slow pressure building up, and I could feel it in the way my shoulders stayed tense, in the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking just a little. And then it happened, the moment that confirmed my gut wasn't lying. I walked toward the hallway to use the bathroom, and as I passed by the half-closed door to the spare room, I heard my own name, soft but clear. And nothing in life makes your heart drop faster than hearing your name said in a whisper when nobody expects you to be nearby. And I froze right there in the hallway, pretending to look at some old family photos on the wall, while my ears leaned closer to that door. And I didn't hear everything, but I heard enough to make my skin crawl. Words like "can't keep pretending," and "it's time," and "she deserves to know." And I felt my legs go weak because I realized then that this birthday wasn't about candles or cake or smiles. It was about a secret that had been sitting in that family way longer than I'd ever imagined. And in that moment, all I could think was, if they were already whispering about telling me the truth, what exactly were they so scared to let me find out? After I heard my name behind that half-closed door, everything inside me felt sideways. But I pulled myself together the way folks my age know how. by smiling through the hurt and swallowing fear like it was nothing new. And I walked back into that living room wearing the same face I'd worn my whole life, the face that said I was fine even when I wasn't. And I sat back down like I hadn't just heard people deciding my future behind a thin wooden door. And I watched them, really watched them now, with a kind of sharp vision that only comes when your heart's been cracked open. And I started seeing details I'd missed before, like how certain hands shook when they picked up cups, how eyes avoided meeting mine for more than 2 seconds, and how the room felt smaller even though nothing had moved. And the music kept playing, but it didn't feel like music anymore. It felt like noise trying to drown out a truth that was getting louder in my head. And I kept telling myself not to jump to conclusions, not to assume the worst, because jumping too soon can break your own heart in ways that don't heal. But silence can be just as loud as chaos, and this silence was screaming, and I could feel my heart beat in my ears like a drum warning me that something big was building under the surface. And then came the cake moment, that little fake pause where everyone gathers around and pretends like everything is perfect. And as they sang, I noticed something so small but so chilling. Every single camera was pointed at the girl with the candles, except one. And that one camera was pointed at me by someone who wasn't smiling, by someone who looked more nervous than happy. And I couldn't understand why anyone would be recording my face during a birthday song unless they were waiting for a reaction, waiting for a moment, waiting for something to crack. And that thought sat heavy in my chest, and memories started flooding my mind, old memories I hadn't thought about in years, moments where things felt off, but I brushed them aside because I loved too hard to question. And I realized how many times in my life I chose peace over truth just so people wouldn't feel uncomfortable around me. And right there, with cake crumbs on my plate and noise filling my ears, I made a quiet decision in my heart. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront anybody yet. I was going to sit still and let the story come to me. Because when people think you're blind, they get sloppy. And people who get sloppy start showing you their real faces. And as the candles got blown out and everyone clapped and cheered, I felt like I was at the calm center of a storm nobody else could see. And then something happened that pushed my fear up another level. My phone buzzed, and it wasn't a message, it was a calendar reminder. Something old I had saved years ago, and I had completely forgotten about it. And the reminder simply said, "Today, ask about the truth." And I don't even remember saving that. Don't remember when, don't remember why. But seeing that on the screen on the very same day people were whispering about me felt like fate was screaming in my face. And my hands started shaking because I realized that somewhere in my past, some version of me already knew something wasn't right, and that version of me left a message for the woman I am today. And that scared me more than any whisper or glance or fake smile, because if I had forgotten the truth before, maybe the secret they were hiding wasn't new at all. Maybe it had been buried for years and was about to dig itself out.
That little reminder on my phone didn't leave my mind, not even for a second.
And while everybody around me kept laughing and clinking cups and acting like cake and candles were the most important thing in the world, my spirit was crawling back in time, digging up moments I had locked away deep just to survive. And I started remembering how years ago there were conversations that felt half-finished, arguments that ended too fast, hugs that felt forced, and compliments that sounded more like distractions than love. And you don't realize what you've buried until something shakes the ground above it, and that birthday shook the ground hard. And I started connecting dots between old arguments and new whispers, between fake smiles from the past and fake smiles from the present. And suddenly it felt like I'd been living inside a story where everybody else knew the script but me. And the worst part wasn't even the secret anymore. It was the disrespect of being the only one not trusted with the truth. And I thought back to times when I was told, "Don't worry about it," or "You don't need to know that," or "We were just trying to protect you." And back then I accepted those words because I thought protection looked like kindness. But sitting there at that party, I realized protection can look a whole lot like control, and control can look a whole lot like love when you don't know any better. And I noticed that every time I moved, someone watched me, not in a caring way, but in a tracking way, like they were making sure I didn't wander into the wrong room or hear the wrong conversation. And the cake table felt like a stage, and we were all actors playing a part, and I was the only one who hadn't been given the script. And I wanted to scream right there, wanted to shake the truth loose from someone's mouth, wanted to demand answers. But old instincts kicked in, the ones that told me staying calm keeps you safe. And I started walking slow through the rooms, using the bathroom again, looking for napkins, just giving myself excuses to move around and observe. And what I found was worse than anything loud or dramatic. I found fear, real fear in people's eyes. Fear of losing control, fear of being exposed, fear of what would happen if I ever fully understood what they'd done. And that's when it hit me. This secret wasn't something small. It wasn't some harmless surprise or old misunderstanding. This was something that had shape, weight, history, and I could feel it breathing under the surface of every smile and laugh. And as I passed by the hallway again, I saw the spare room door slightly more open than before, and inside I caught a glimpse of something I wasn't supposed to see yet. A cardboard box, old and worn, with my name written on the side in a handwriting I recognized instantly, and my heart damn near stopped beating, because nobody was supposed to have boxes of my past hidden in their closets. Nobody was supposed to be collecting pieces of my life like that. And I walked away before anyone noticed me staring, but my legs felt like glass, my hands felt cold, and my thoughts felt louder than ever, because now I wasn't just hearing whispers, I was seeing proof, and I knew if there was a box with my name on it, then whatever they were hiding wasn't just talk anymore. It was something they had planned, organized, and buried, and I could feel it. The moment where I would finally see inside that box was getting closer and closer. That box with my name on it stayed burned into my mind like a slow wildfire. And no matter how hard I tried to sit still and act like I didn't see it, my heart kept pulling me back toward that hallway like it was tied to that door with invisible thread. And when folks think you old, they think you slow. But I've lived long enough to know how to move quiet. And when the noise in the living room got loud enough, when laughter filled the air and dishes started clattering like shields against silence, I slipped back down that hallway like a shadow.
and the spare room door stood there, just barely open, like it was daring me to cross a line I was never meant to step over. And my hand hovered in the air for a second, shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing once you open a door like that, you can't go back to who you were before. And I pushed it slowly, inch by inch, feeling the hinge cry out soft like it was warning me. And inside the room, the air felt colder, heavier, like secrets had weight and time had stopped moving in there. And that box sat in the corner, taped up, dusty, worn around the edges like it had been moved too many times and hidden too many places. And seeing my name scrawled across the side in marker made my stomach drop, because nobody writes your name on a secret box unless they're doing something they don't want you to see. And I kneeled down slowly, hands shaking as I pulled at the tape. And when it finally gave, the lid lifted with a soft crack that might as well have been thunder in my ears. And I didn't see everything at once. I just saw hints at first. Manila envelopes, old photos, folded papers, and things that looked like they didn't belong to me but were somehow tied to me. And I picked up the first photograph with fingers that felt like they weren't even mine anymore. And it was a picture of me, younger, but the background wasn't familiar, and the people standing near me weren't either. And it felt like looking at a version of my life that someone had erased from my memory. And my chest started to ache because I realized this wasn't about one secret. This was about a whole chapter of my life I didn't remember, or maybe wasn't allowed to remember. And suddenly the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage built on top of buried truths. And just when I thought my heart couldn't beat any harder, I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, careful footsteps, and I froze, box still open, truth staring back at me. And I had to make a choice in that moment, either expose myself and confront them right there, or hide and let them think their secret was still safe. And I chose to hide, because sometimes knowing more gives you power, and power comes from silence, not noise. And I slid everything back inside, closed the lid, pressed the tape down as best I could, and stepped back into the corner just as the door opened wider, and someone peeked inside the room looking straight at the spot where the box sat, checking if it was still untouched. And that was the scariest part of all. Not that the secret existed, but that they were scared enough to keep checking on it. And if they were that scared, then whatever was inside that box was bigger than I ever imagined. After I slipped out of that spare room and blended back into the party, everything about those people felt different. Like I'd been handed a pair of glasses that let me see what was hiding behind every grin and every laugh. And it's a strange feeling when the people you've known your whole life suddenly start looking like strangers wearing familiar faces. And I sat down and tried to act casual, but my mind kept replaying the feel of that box lid, the smell of dust, the sight of those papers and photos that didn't make sense. And every time someone smiled at me, all I could see now was fear under their teeth, fear of being caught, fear of being exposed, fear of what would happen if I ever put those puzzle pieces together. And the music got louder, the jokes got bigger, the cake got cut, but none of it felt light anymore. It felt like a stage show everybody was scared to mess up. and folks started being extra kind to me. And when people start being extra kind out of nowhere, you know they guilty about something. Offering me food, asking if I was okay, laughing too hard at my jokes, but their hands shook and their eyes slid away like they didn't trust themselves not to give something away. And I played dumb, I played slow, I played easy, because when you let people think they're winning, they stop being careful, and that's when the real truth slips out. And I started picking up patterns. Who watched who moved when I moved, who kept glancing at the hallway like they were guarding a prison instead of a spare room. And that's when I started realizing this wasn't just one or two people hiding something. This was coordinated, planned, agreed upon. And the thought of that hurt more than the secret itself, because it meant there had been kitchen table talks about me, late night decisions about what I should and shouldn't know. And that kind of betrayal ain't loud. It's quiet and slow and sits heavy in your chest long after the smiles fade. And I felt older in that moment, not from age, but from the weight of realizing how long I might have been living inside a lie. And then something happened that showed me just how deep this went. Someone pulled me aside, gentle-like, soft voice, guiding hand on my elbow, and said, "We just want you to be happy today. Don't think too hard about anything." And those words hit me like a punch, because nobody tells you not to think unless they're scared of what you might figure out if you do. And I looked right into their eyes, smiled back, and said I was fine. But inside, my spirit was screaming. And while the party started winding down and people started packing plates and balloons started losing air, I realized I wasn't just hurt, I was changed. Because once you see behind the curtain, you can't go back to believing the show. And the air felt thicker, my chest felt tighter, and the longer I stayed in that house, the more I felt like time was running out before something snapped. And as I walked past that hallway one last time before the night ended, I saw the spare room light turn on by itself, slow, soft, like someone had just opened the door again. And my gut told me the real thing they were hiding wasn't done showing itself yet. That spare room light turning on felt like the house itself was trying to talk to me. And I stood there for a second longer than I should have, pretending to look for my coat, pretending to be distracted by the leftover cake smells and the chatter of folks saying their goodbyes. But my spirit was pulled tight like a wire, and I started drifting toward that hallway again, slow and careful, because when silence starts making noise in your head, you don't ignore it, you follow it. And I could feel my heart banging so loud I swore it might give me away. And the closer I got, the quieter the house felt, like even the walls were holding their breath. And that light spilling out from under the door looked warmer than it should have, almost golden, like something important was sitting in there waiting to be seen. And I placed my hand on the door frame just to steady myself, because at my age, you learn to respect moments that can change you. And I pushed the door open just a little, and I didn't step inside right away. I just looked. And what I saw didn't make any sense at first, because the box wasn't on the floor anymore. It was on the bed, open, and the papers inside it were spread out like someone had been studying them, like someone was trying to understand the same truth I had just started to taste. And that scared me in a whole different way, because it meant I wasn't the only one dealing with this secret anymore. Someone else was moving pieces around. Someone else was deciding what should stay hidden and what shouldn't. and I felt this deep tiredness crawl into my bones, the kind of tired you don't fix with sleep. And I started to think, how long had they been playing with my history? How long had they been deciding what parts of my life I was allowed to remember? And that's when the real sickness of it all settled in my chest, because it wasn't just about hiding something, it was about rewriting me without asking. And as I stood there staring at those old envelopes and faded photos, memories started flickering in and out like broken film, flashes of places I didn't fully remember, faces I couldn't clearly name, voices that sounded familiar but felt far away. And I began to realize that this birthday wasn't just a turning point, it was a door back into a past I'd been pushed to forget. And before I could step any farther into that room, I heard footsteps behind me, slow and heavy this time, not soft and sneaky like before, but confident, like whoever it was didn't care if I heard 'em coming. And my whole body went cold, because there's nothing worse than being caught halfway between truth and safety. And the footsteps stopped just a few feet behind me, and I felt the warmth of someone's presence before I ever turned around. And in that frozen moment, I understood that the game had shifted. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was part of it now. And as I slowly started to turn my head to see who was standing behind me, one terrifying thought ran through my mind. What if the person about to speak wasn't just hiding the secret? What if they were the reason it existed in the first place?
I didn't turn around right away, not when I felt that warm breath behind me or heard that quiet shifting of feet on the carpet, because sometimes your soul needs one last second of peace before it hears the thing that might change everything. And when the voice finally spoke, it didn't shout, it didn't accuse, it didn't demand. It just said my name, soft and slow, like it wasn't sure if I was about to collapse or not. And that soft voice somehow hurt more than anger ever could, because it carried guilt, and guilt means truth is sitting real close. And I finally turned and saw the face I didn't expect to see standing in that doorway, a face I'd defended my whole life, a face I'd forgiven more times than I could count, and my chest tightened so hard I thought my heart might crack in two, because I realized right then this wasn't just a secret, this was family choosing silence over honesty. And the person looked tired, but not tired from age, tired from carrying something too long without letting it out. And they started talking in broken pieces, like they were scared the words would hurt me if they said them too fast. And they told me they never wanted me to find out like this, never wanted me to open that box, never wanted me to feel the way I was about to feel. And that only made me feel worse, because when people say they were trying to protect you, what they really mean is they were trying to protect themselves. And I stood there listening, not saying a word, just letting the truth slowly bleed through the gaps in their voice. And they didn't tell me everything, not even close, just enough to make my world shift sideways, just enough to confirm that the past I thought I lived and the past that was real weren't the same thing. And as they spoke, I felt something change inside me, like the anger I expected to feel just didn't show up, and instead there was this deep, cold sadness settling in, because anger feels loud and clean, but sadness is quiet and heavy and lives with you. And they kept asking if I was okay, if I needed to sit down, if I wanted to talk, And all I could think was how many years I'd spent asking them for honesty and getting silence instead. And when the talking finally stopped and the room went quiet again, I realized I'd stepped into a truth that didn't have a clean ending, didn't have a nice solution, didn't have a pretty bow to tie around it. And the worst part was that I could tell there was more they weren't saying, more they were still holding back, because their eyes kept drifting to the box and their hands kept shaking like they were holding on to words they were too scared to let go of. And I felt that same old weight settle on my chest, the weight of knowing you're close to the truth but still not being handed the whole thing. And that's when I made another quiet decision in my heart. I wasn't gonna beg anymore. I wasn't gonna chase answers. I wasn't gonna cry for honesty. I was gonna let time expose what people tried to hide, because truth has a funny way of leaking out. And as I stepped past them and walked slowly down the hallway toward the front of the house, my heart told me this story wasn't even near finished, because now I knew who was involved, but I still didn't know the full reason why. After walking down that hallway, I thought I could breathe a little easier, that maybe the worst was behind me. But that calm didn't last long, because there's a way silence sits on you when a secret is still alive, and I could feel it crawling up my spine, making my skin tingle like I'd stepped outside in cold wind, and every room I passed through felt heavier, like the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. And I realized that this house, this family, this so-called celebration had been carrying a storm for years, a storm nobody wanted to name, a storm that had been brewing slowly, quietly underneath the smiles and fake laughter. And it hit me that the birthday had never been about candles or cake. It had been a perfect cover, a distraction, a way to make me think everything was normal while the real stuff was happening right under my nose. And I sat down in the living room again, pretending to sip my soda, pretending the weight in my chest was just age or stress or indigestion. But every glance, every whisper, every sideways smile around me told a different story, a story I had been too trusting to notice before. And as I sat there, my eyes wandered back to that box I'd opened in the spare room, wondering how much more it could hold, what other truths were tucked inside. And my mind started replaying all the clues I'd missed over the years, all the little moments that now made sense in a terrifying way, all the times my gut screamed at me but I ignored it, because what we ignore in the name of love comes back tenfold when truth decides it's time. And I realized I'd been living inside a carefully etiquette version of my life, one that someone else decided I should see, one that hid the parts that would hurt me if I knew them too soon. And I thought about confronting someone, asking questions, demanding answers, but I also knew that pulling at threads too fast can tear things apart before you're ready to handle it. So I decided to wait, to watch, to let the storm reveal itself on its own terms. And as the party started to wind down, people began saying goodbyes, hugs were exchanged, plates were cleared, and balloons sagged against the ceiling like tired old soldiers. And I noticed how quiet the house felt now that the noise was leaving, like everyone was tiptoeing around the secret they knew I'd uncovered. And then my phone buzzed again, not a message this time, but a missed call from a number I didn't recognize, and I could feel my stomach tighten, because sometimes a missed call means more than words ever could.
and I knew if I called back, I might finally get the piece of the story that had been missing all these years, the piece that could explain why my own family had hidden this from me. And as I stared at the screen, the calm before the storm felt heavier than the storm itself, because I had a choice to make, a choice that could finally show me the truth or break me completely. And I realized in that moment, just before picking up my phone, that the next step I took would change everything. And I had no idea if I was ready to face what was waiting on the other end. I stared at that missed call for what felt like an eternity, my fingers hovering over the screen, heart hammering like it knew something my mind didn't yet, and I could feel every second stretching longer than it should. Because after all the whispers, the hidden box, the secrets dancing around me all night, this was the moment it had been building toward, the moment where I either stepped fully into the truth or stepped back into comfortable lies. And I took a deep breath, the kind that fills your lungs with courage you didn't know you had, and I pressed call, my voice trembling a little when the line connected, because hearing someone speak can feel like hearing the universe itself unfold. And on the other side, a quiet, shaky voice said my name, and in that one word I could feel years of secrets, guilt, and fear compressed into a single sound. And as the person started to explain, slowly, carefully, how everything had started, why certain things were hidden, and why they thought I wasn't ready, my chest ached from relief and heartbreak at the same time, because there it was, the truth, not sugar-coated, not easy, but real, raw, and heavy. And I realized that all those years I had spent trusting, forgiving, and loving without question had led me to this moment where I could finally see the full picture. And it wasn't pretty, it wasn't convenient, but it was mine to hold. And as I listened, memories I'd thought forgotten came rushing back, connecting the dots, making sense of the things that had always felt just a little off. And I laughed softly to myself, a shaky, bittersweet laugh, because after all that hiding, after all that pretending, the story of my life, my family, and that birthday had revealed itself piece by piece, and it was nothing like I expected, nothing like anyone had prepared me for, but it was honest, brutally honest, and honesty has a way of cutting deeper than lies ever could, and I felt a strange calm settling over me, not a relief that healed everything, but a calm that comes from finally seeing the truth, finally knowing what was real and what wasn't, finally understanding why things had happened the way they did. And I realized I had choices now, choices that could change the rest of my life, and I felt stronger for it, even though my heart still throbbed with pain and confusion. And as I hung up the phone and walked back into the house, where the last guests were leaving and the balloons drooped sadly against the ceiling, I understood that the birthday wasn't just a day, it was a turning point, a moment where the illusion shattered, and the people I loved, flawed and human, were suddenly more real to me than they had ever been before. And I sat down slowly, looking around at the quiet house, at the remnants of cake and plates and half-deflated balloons, and I whispered to myself, not out loud, just in my heart, that life was messy, people are imperfect, and love doesn't always come wrapped in honesty. But once you see the truth, once you embrace it, you can never go back to pretending. and I smiled softly, knowing that birthday had changed everything. Because sometimes the hardest moments, the ones that scare you, the ones that break your heart, are the very ones that teach you the most about yourself.